Dave and Sonia Brown, a childless couple, are sitting at the kitchen table. Dave has just returned from work. Sonia was an hour ahead of him and smartly dressed. There is a suitcase near the front door. Now, Dave, the main thing I want you to finish this weekend is painting the nursery. The paint cans are right outside the door, and the guy at the store said, you need at least 2 coats. Oh, before I forget, did you ask your parents if we could paint the spare room? I know they said to treat this house like our own, but it's still common courtesy. Yes, they're fine. Remind me again, Sonia, why do we need to paint the nursery now, when you're not even pregnant? Sonia sighed at the need to repeat it all again. She loved Dave very much. He has been a good provider and will be a great father when the time comes, but he could be annoyingly absent-minded at times. Because, Dave, I'm already off the pill, so it's only a matter of months before I get pregnant, and maybe another year before the nursery has little inhabitants. I told you I did some research that showed that even the safest paints emit toxic fumes for up to a year after they're applied. The main reason I'm leaving with Bev this weekend is because I'm sensitive to paint smell. Otherwise, I would have stayed and we could have done this together. And now I propose this. First thing tomorrow morning, you have to take my car to the service center. They will give you another one in return for the day I already booked it. You come back here and apply the first coat of paint. This should keep you busy until about lunchtime. Then, if the car service is finished, take the car and go to your mother. She'll feed you lunch. Typically, mowing the lawn takes up most of your day. Dinner for tomorrow is in the freezer. On Sunday morning, you must apply a second coat of paint and please keep the nursery door closed so that the fumes do not saturate the whole house. Bev told me to tell you that Mick will pick you up in about an hour to play golf. You can have dinner at the club and Bev will drop me here around 8. How do you like my proposal? Wow, I'm going to be a busy, organized bio this weekend, aren't I? At that moment, Sonia's phone rang, having received an incoming SMS. She looked at him. Bev is already leaving the house to pick me up. Now, are you sure you have everything you need? Don't worry, woman, I'll be fine. Are you sure you'd rather stay here with me than go to the spa for the weekend with Bev? We could try to conceive a child in these 2 days. Ooh, tempting, Dave. But as I understand it, we have the rest of our lives to spend dirty weekends, and I only have time left to enjoy a little freedom until I become a mother. Sonia had to turn away from her husband when she said this. Her self-image as a decent, honest person has been severely damaged by recent decisions. Okay, Sonia. I guess all you have to do is open this little parting gift I bought you. Dave reached under the table and placed a wrapped box the size of a pack of cigarettes in front of Sonia. She looked at her, a little puzzled. Should I open it now, Dave? Can I do it this weekend? That's your business. You can open it now or later, but I highly recommend using it this weekend. Sonia grabbed the gift and began to tear off the wrapping, revealing a box packed in cellophane. It took her a while to realize what it was. Dave filled the silence. I had to take a guess, but I think 12 condoms will be enough for you and Paul for 2 nights and 2 days at the spa. I took the risk of buying the extra large ones because I guess they are big. After all, in fact, you wouldn't give up our marriage and future children for the sake of an average like mine. Sonia froze in shock, unable to take her eyes off the box of condoms in her hand. Dave continued to say, Also, I guess your huge list of tasks for me to do while you're gone should keep me from thinking about questions like, why did Sonia avoid my question when I asked what spa you and Bev were going to? Or, why did she discourage me from calling her this weekend? Sonia couldn't move, couldn't think, couldn't act. Her foolproof plan to have one harmless fling before motherhood, egged on by her best friend, had just blown up in her face. She was shocked. Did you keep the receipt for the paint, dear? Yes, this room needs to be repainted, but I don't think a light pastel shade suitable for both boys and girls would be appropriate right now. I'll get a different color when I drop your car off at the service center tomorrow. I guess, logically, there's no reason for you to rush out on Sunday afternoon, now that I know what you're really going to do. Oh, by the way, great acting. You were really convincing in your lies." Not believing in empty words, Dave fell silent and watched as Sonia destroyed herself with self-accusations. Leading up to this point, he wondered if she had a plan in place should the real reason for her trip ever be revealed. Now, watching her face like a book, he realized that it was not there. Interestingly, she did not deny what he said. Maybe the fact that he not only knew what she was going to do this weekend, but with whom, convinced her that there was no point in lying. Perhaps she had finally remembered how fundamentally honest she was. He waited until she looked into his eyes to get an idea of what she was thinking. And he waited. Finally, "Do you think I'm still going away for the weekend? I can't leave now. I have to stay." "Why, Sonia?" "Well, the thought of settling down and having a baby was scary, so—" "No, Sonia, why do you want to stay here this weekend? What's the point of this? What would you achieve?" If Sonia had looked stunned before, now she looked completely confused. "Achieve it, Dave." "How can I explain what, Dave? You can forgive me. After all, I haven't done anything yet." "Yes, I plan to, but now no, Dave, never." If Sonia had dared to look at Dave's face, she would have realized how dead the horse she was whipping was. She justified her actions in her own head before deciding to finally give in to Bev's nagging and join her on one of her secret weekends away from her marriage. If she ever thought about the consequences of getting caught after the fact, she would have sworn that her marriage was strong enough to survive it. Now, knowing that nothing had actually happened, forgiveness had already been granted in her mind. All she has to do is weather the storm, confess. This will bring back her plans for life. When, in 6 months, in a year? That's what she thought, and that's why Dave's next words confused her. "Just go away, Sonia. Go to your horny stallion or go to your mother. Honestly, I don't care where you go. Just go." For the first time since Dave's revelation, Sonia dared to look her husband in the face. He looked down, and his expression was impassive. The only noticeable hint of emotion was the wet glint in his eyes. Sonia thought it best to leave for a while. Right now, Dave was clearly hurt, and she didn't want him to say anything that he couldn't easily take back. She was already composing a story in her head for her mother. "How long should I stay away, Dave?" Dave looked at her and shook his head. "Always, Sonia." Sonia's jaw dropped. Dave ignored her reaction. "Yes, we had 5 good years, but it's all over. Nothing to talk about. We have no children, and this house belongs to my parents. We both make about the same amount of money, so there's no need to even try to talk about child support. I've spent the last 2 days hiding our money. I guess that's fair, since I haven't spent a damn thing in our entire time together, and you've spent your fair share on clothes, that flashy car, and your weekend trips with Bev. I close my accounts and credit cards shortly before returning home. I suppose you can go to a lawyer, but it will cost you more than what you can get back. If I were you, I'd take this as a learning experience for your next relationship. And lastly, Sonia." Dave made a dramatic pause. "Go to hell." Sonia was completely confused again. She did nothing to justify this reaction. Unless Dave's mention of other trips implies that he thought she had been on similar trips before. All the previous ones were either real holiday weekends or her cover for Bev's antics. This made her feel relieved. "Oh my God! What, do you think I've already cheated on you? Well, I didn't do it. This time should have been the first. The only time. Yes, Bev spent ages trying to convince me to join her on one of our trips, but I never did. In the end, she seduced me and planned on Paul, one of her lovers. It doesn't matter whether it's the first time or not, Sonia. Over the past 2 days, you have proven yourself to be such a consummate actress and liar that one way or another I will never trust you again. This happens when you are caught in a lie. You're losing trust. But it does not matter. You intended to cuckold me, you admit it. And that's the end. Now, for the sake of all the times we've spoken words of love to each other over the past 5 years, let's just go our separate ways, Sonia. If Dave was ranting and raving at this moment, Sonia would feel better. She would have some hope that he was just spitting out his bile. The cold, emotionless tone of his voice confused and frightened her. She looked into his face, again into his eyes, and regretted that she had done it. Still the impassive face, but now the eyes shine like obsidian, without love, pity, or even signs that they are looking at something that is not disgusting to look at. But Dave, you have to believe me. Kat, how can you be so emotionless about this? You can't give up loving me just like that. Just stop loving me. Dave responded in a still, emotionless voice. 2 days ago, I would have completely agreed with you. I'm much wiser now. Dave's voice got louder and louder throughout these 2 sentences. Finally, his face began to show anger. I come home from work a few minutes early on Wednesday, with flowers for you, I might add, and park on the front lawn to wash the SUV. I walk in the back door intending to surprise you with flowers, so what? I can hear you talking on the fucking phone to fucking Bev. That's what. And what do I hear? You're laughing, planning to lie to me so you can sneak out this weekend and cheat on me with Paul. You giggle, about to load me up so I don't have time to think about where you are and what you're up to. But Dave, you know I always giggle when I'm nervous. You, laughing, stuck a knife in my back. It took all the love away from me almost instantly. Knowing that I would simply kill you if I continued, I quietly left. From then on, it was all a game on my part. Dave fell silent, his chest heaving and his eyes shining with hatred. He fought the desire to strangle the stranger who had deceived her, making her think that if Sonia cheated on him with Paul, then no one would know about it, and he would continue to love the actress who had taken more than 5 years of his life. Thoughts were spinning in Sonia's head. If only she could make Dave believe that she had never done anything but make plans. This was truly the first time, and she actually giggles under stress. She needed to convince him. It's time for her to have a baby. It was all part of the plan. Dave, I didn't mean to upset you. I love you. Dave! Dave was fiddling with his phone. He pressed a button, then held the phone up to her. His face turned into an impassive mask again. A voice came from the phone speaker. Her voice. Ha 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 ha. I guess it'll be a hot thought about poor old naive Dave painting the nursery while I have sex behind his back. Ha ha ha. You could say feathering our nest, tasting another guy's delights in his nest. Even with all her rationalizations, all her filters and delusions, Sonia recognized this tiny passage as extremely destructive. For a moment, she could imagine how Dave must have felt when he first heard it. The work before her, rebuilding his trust and love, suddenly looked like the view of the top of Everest from base camp. At that moment, the sound of a car horn was heard. Bev has arrived. Remaining in the car, she hoped not to avoid looking into the eyes of her longtime friend. A friend whose wife she seduced with her degraded moral view of the world. Sonia heard the beep and realized that it would not stop until she went out and talked to her best friend. The problem was that her fight had to begin right here and now. She was confused by the dilemma. Dave brought her out of the deadlock. I think this is the answer to my question. What question, Dave? When I spoke to Mick, her best friend Bev's husband, an hour ago, telling him the whole story about his wife's infidelities, he still hadn't decided whether to catch his slutty wife before she left or to ambush her while she was gone. I think he decided to do the latter. Sonia looked at the phone in her husband's hand and remembered that conversation with Bev on Wednesday. She was pretty sure that what she said was enough for Dave to understand that Bev was an experienced slut, even listening to the conversation from one side. Her best friend is in big trouble. She just doesn't know it yet. Turning around, she ran out of the house. It was raining quite heavily, so she jumped into the passenger seat. He knows. Who knows, so what? Mick knows you're going away this weekend to have sex with Peter. Without giving Sonia time to get out, Bev pulled the car. Shortly after this, Dave heard the sound of burning tires outside. Not believing his luck in getting her out of the house so easily, Dave placed Sonia's suitcase on the porch, wrote the single word, entrance to Mick, then picked up his tools and began changing the locks. He whistled as he worked, and why not? He had already let out all his anger, cried out all his regrets, and banished evil from his life. Sonia was too busy crying and ranting on Bev's shoulder to even bother him with phone calls. And that was fine with him. After changing all the locks, he sat down at his computer, copied the recorded file from his phone to his laptop, attached it to an email titled, "Why I'm Divorcing Sonia," and sent it to all the addresses in his and their shared address books. He felt it was justified to first talk to mutual friends, her relatives and work colleagues. She was very convincing when, looking into his eyes, she boldly lied to his face. People needed to be warned what an evil and treacherous bitch she was. He called her mother and explained it verbally so that the email wouldn't come as a big shock. He thought he owed her. By the time Bev and the protesting kidnapped Sonia arrived at her house, Mick had already changed the locks. While his now estranged wife knocked and screamed, he completed bank transfers on his computer. Every account Bev had access to now had a zero balance. Of course, she will eventually get her share, but only after finding a source of funds to pay a lawyer. He changed the app, opened Bev's email address, and read the email he'd received yesterday. On the surface, it was from Sonia, and alluded to the fact that all their carefully laid plans for a weekend away from their marriage had been successful. But if their husbands found out about it and objected to it after the fact, then something would have to be done about them. The email was actually from Dave using Sonia's account, but the casual observer would never know that. If Bev doesn't leave the house quietly, he can always threaten to weaponize the email for the purpose of a restraining order. When it became obvious that Bev's banging on her old front door was doing nothing but attracting the neighbors' curiosity, she returned to her car and Sonia, who was waiting for her. It only took 5 minutes for years of friendship to fall apart forever. Sonia accused Bev of talking her into going on a weekend adventure. Bev accused Sonia of not being careful enough by allowing her husband to overhear their conversation. Bev dropped her ex-friend off at her old house with a high-pitched squeal. "Bitch!" Sonia's calls to Dave's phone went unanswered, and she discovered that her keys no longer fit the locks when she tried them. Ashamed, she went to her mother, where she was received very coldly. Dave refused to answer her calls over the weekend, but responded to a text message the following Monday evening. If she comes to the house at 2 o'clock the next day, he tells his neighbor to look after Sonia while she collects her remaining personal belongings. Meanwhile, Sonia reasoned that since Dave had been so emotionless on Friday, he wasn't that upset, and, with some groveling, he might one day forgive her. She knew that he was a very controllable man, so her plan was to sneak into the house on Tuesday, cook him an amazing meal, and then meet him at the door dressed for sex. On Tuesday, their neighbor let her into the house and told her he would return later to check on what she planned to pick up. Sonia wandered around the house, already feeling like a stranger. There was a smell of paint, and the door to the children's room was closed. Out of curiosity, Sonia decided to see what color Dave ended up choosing. Opening the door, she walked in, and the blood left her face. Sonia realized that she had confused Dave's visible emotions with what he actually felt. He used the paint she brought. All over the wall, in angry letters, were written the refrain, "Slut," "Stolen 5 years," "Bitch," and "Betrayal." Sonia leaned against the doorframe when it all hit her. She looked down in horror. The paint was still wet and had left a wide streak on her hand. She jumped away from the door, trembling, feeling as if she had been branded with terrible words shouted at her from the walls. For the first time, Sonia saw her actions for what they were, the damage and pain she caused both her husband and herself. Screaming in sympathy for her husband and her own loss, Sonia Travis, née Brown, gathered her belongings and, fearful of pain and humiliation, left her home for the last time. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.